Welcome, Walter.
Hello?
I need to undo the mic. Hello, hi.
My first question is, what is a digital colorist for you?
Well, I've been asked the question, many times, especially from people that don't work in the industry. Before I start, I want to apologize to all of you. I don't speak Spanish nearly enough to be able to do it in Spanish, so forgive me, will be translated later on. It's difficult to explain because it's one of those craft that changed a lot through the year, and now it's more prevalent in what we do in the industry. But basically, I usually take it down in two different aspects of what we do. One is the creation of the look and feel of the movie. If in the past, when we had film, pretty much the look and feel was dictated by the stock you were using for shooting, the stock you were using for printing, the photochemical process, and you can't really change that much. So the majority of what you were doing it on the set in front of the camera. Now we can create artificial looks that simply were not possible before. So if you think about, 300, Matrix, Joker, all the movie that you see now, there is a preparation of the general look. That is basically how the shooting on the set will be presented to the main display. That it can be HDR, that can be standard dynamic range, that can be whatever the display we are talking about. So in theater will be the projection, so P3 projection, theatrical. That is the most fun part, but also the smallest part. Like you do it once for a movie and it's pretty much done. The second part is the actual technicality of make the observers, so all of us, think that the movie was shot in one place, in one location, one after the other. Imagine a chase that you shoot through the course of perhaps 3-4 days with cars outside, inside. You may have the sun movie, you may have clouds, you may have slightly different lighting conditions. So our job is to modify the photography elegantly to put everything pretty much as if was shot as a one unique piece. So you just think about the action, you don't think about, hey, there was a sun there and now it's not there anymore. You want to do a question?
Yeah. And basically, like, when you start your node structure, does it depend on the movie you're doing, or does it you use the same node structure throughout your whole work?
So I tend to divide even the node structure that I will show in a moment. I divide it mentally in blocks. So there are blocks that belong to literally put the shot in the ballpark, blocks that belong to the fine tuning, and blocks that belong to the trim of the scene. And it's basically similar. It depends if it's, for example, theatrical or TV, tend to be very the same. If it's advertisement, perhaps I need to add a few more nodes just because advertisement usually you tend to do a lot more finesse. And what belong to the actual style, the look of the movie, usually is not in the main node. It's either at the group level or a timeline level, because I want to separate mentally the look of the movie to what I do to a shot. The idea is that the look should be global, should be something that I do for the whole thing. And then the shot is what I do to make that particular shot works with the rest of the photography. Usually, it's about the same node structure. It can be a few nodes more, a few nodes less. Or if a specific case come up, I perhaps modify it at the beginning of the project and just to apply that to everything.
Thank you for the answer.
Of course.
And when it comes like to color space transforming and stuff like that, you're taking care of it like before you start your node structure, at the end of the node structure, or maybe like on the timeline level?
The basic idea for me is, unless you're doing a documentary or a show that has way too many cameras, you have a hero camera. Can be an Alexa, can be a Sony, can be a Red, a Blackmagic, a Canon, you name it. You have a hero camera, and usually you have a hero logarithmic color space. So the idea is that is the color space that I use for all the color corrections. If a shot belongs to a different camera, then I do a color space transform to bring that specific shot to the logarithmic. And the look at the back end, you have to imagine to be like a print that gets the logarithmic final and transform that into display. Gus, can I just share my screen so I can put this one on? Let me see if I share this one. You should see a white page.
Okay.
Okay, perfect. So the basic idea for me is, on top of everything, there is the look. The look target whatever is your display, for example, the theater. So that will be for a theatrical, for example, a P3D65 gamma 2.6. That's one of the many colors that we target for theatrical.
2.6, okay.
It could be P3D65, it could be P3DCI, it could be whatever. I don't usually work in XYZ. I work in one of the final one. To the look, you're feeding a logarithmic. That usually is whatever logarithm the camera has. In the case of what I'm going to show you in a moment, that was done on a Sony. So it's an S-log3 S-log3.cine. That's how the Sony was the Bayer in my case. Below the look, there is pretty much the color that you do for a scene. So instead of going shot by shot by shot, I tend to go and look at the scene and see where this scene should live. So you may have, for example, scene 1, scene 2, scene 3, and so forth. Under the scene, then you have all the shots. It's just whatever the shots are, whatever how many you have, and so forth. The general idea of coloring a scene, if you think about how the proceeding of a movie happen, you have a script. The script identify, guess what, a scene. When they go on the set, they tend to actually build the whole cinematography around the action of that scene. It can be break up in parts, but the idea is that if you have two people dialogue, they put the light for those two people, they do the blocking, they do the costume, they do the set, then they shoot the scene. So the whole block here should be pretty coherent. Go away. So if the scene, if I can make a correction for the scene to bring it roughly where I want it, then the majority of the decisions that were done on the set are transported to the final display. To do that, I usually look for what I call a hero shot. There is always one or two people in any movie that get paid the big bucks. Those are the ones that you want to look first. If you're looking at Joker, Joker is the guy. If you're looking at Sweet Tooth, the kid is the guy. So that's the guy that you also want to look at, guy or girls, to be sure that those stars look the best possible. The fact that a supporting actor or actresses is not in the best light, we'll take care of that later. Once you color the scene with the hero shot, then it's just a matter of technically matching the other shot to the hero, and you're done for the scene. So let's get my resolve up. Let's move this thing out and let's reset everything just because. So what I put on the timeline is the actual look. So this represents the look. If I don't put anything, you will see it's simply S log in this case. I think at the very, yeah, escamotri S log 3. Now, in this particular case, the look is whatever we want it to be because I don't have the original director of photography with me. But the idea is you prepare the look with your director of photography. You decide which exposure is going to use on the set, which camera, which type of lighting. Do you want a cleaner look? Do you want a video look? Do you want a film look? Whatever look you think is good for the project, you decide that with the director of photography. And usually they want that look on the set as perhaps a lookup table that they can load on the camera or on the daily. So they start to have an idea of what you're going to get. In this case, I couldn't prepare the look. It came to me after. It doesn't matter. So let's say just for simplicity that I want to use an Alexa lookup table, okay? I can't just do that because the Alexa lookup table is expecting Alexa log C as a color space. Back to the question you asked me early, I need to transform the Sony S log 3 Cine. Where is the Cine? I'm doing something wrong. There we are. To the Alexa. And I don't need this one. I don't need that one. There you are. So basically, I know the lookup table is expecting an Alexa material. I don't have it. I have a Sony. I just do a mathematical transformation to go from one to another. For the majority of the color that you're going to put in front of the camera, this transformation will work. It doesn't work sometimes for very saturated color, neon color, where at that point you need to do something to tuck those color in. But as you can see, a naturalistic color should fit with not too much problem. So this one simply does the log transformation, and this one is my general lot. Just let's name it Alexa just because it's an Alexa. Later on, I'll show you how we can change this one to get a different look. I divided the move in groups. Those groups are the scenes. You can see they're all coherent. So the idea is whatever the script scene was, I try to follow the same story. I'm expecting that if I'm here with the two girls talking, the whole thing will be similar shot to shot to shot to shot. They're not going to change the look at the, they're not going to change the light in the middle. So there is two dinners, they're leaving. I have one group where the logo, the text, the countdown, the oddballs are. This is a smaller bandage scene. So let's go to the garden just because the garden has our hero. So she is our hero. So the first thing we will do as soon as we do the node group is looking at her and see if she works qualitatively, you know, photographically like we want it. So I explained before that in my groups, I have 3 blocks. One block is the basic balance. That is bringing the photography. Let's use the word white balance, but it's just literally a color balance and exposure where roughly the director of photography should have put it. Then you have a second group, that is the tweaks. And this is, you know, many, many nodes, let's say 10, I don't remember how many, but, you know, tens. And the last one is the scene level trim. So when I use this particular nodes, is something that I want to do to the whole scene. When I do something here, is just to balance the shot. And if I do something here, is put a vignette here, put a window, brighten this one, darken the green, whatever is the tweak for the shot. So if you think even a little bit further, these belong to the shot and these belong to the scene. And that is, mentally how I divide my node structure. Why we do node structure? Because node structure give you discipline. Because you will tell you immediately what you did, where, and how to proceed from there. So the first node, like we say, is just balancing. This will be the node that we'll use to do the balancing of the shot. Now, hold on, I cannot think and write at the same time. The shot may require a dynamic adjustment. For example, a character that goes from inside a bar outside, you have not enough light, too much light, and you have to compensate. Or somebody's talking and the cloud come in, the luminance goes down, you have to compensate. So in my second node, I usually put whatever is the, there we are, whatever is the node keyframing that I need to do. So at the end of it, you should have a shot that is well balanced. Now, because at my level, I don't have many keyframes to put. Usually the photography is pretty good. I also use the node if I need to put a noise reducer. I tend to put the noise reducer after the main balance because I may have to add contrast to the main balance, but before all the trims, so the key that I may have to pull it are a little bit cleaner. And there is validity on putting it at the beginning. There is validity putting it at the back. I also split it with a noise reducer that only feed keys. Most of what you see here is just a preference. It's not, in a Bible, if you wish. Oops. Okay, 3 nodes on the top. And let me just name it. Those ones, for me, are the main correction, usually windows or key, that belong to the main character in the shot. For example, she is on the right side of the screen. This node is the one on the right of the screen. If I have to put a window on her, I'll put it there. The other character is on the left side of the screen, so the other node is the left side of the screen. Center, goes without saying, is the center of the screen. So those 3 nodes for me are main character, left of the screen, center of the screen, right of the screen. Now we're going to add 4 nodes. There we are. Let's schlamp it there. Ooh, my mouse is slippery today.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next group of 4 nodes. The first one, I call it log, that literally reflect the logarithmic correction for resolve. And I usually use it for little correction on the shadow, little correction on the highlights, if I need to make them closer. For example, if you are outdoor and the highlights are slightly different shot to shot, I may put it there. If there is smoke on a shot and I need to tweak the black slightly because some of them feel more foggy than others, I tend to put it here and use the shadow control. Now, because now we have a new tool, the HDR tool, there it is. I also put it there. I like the idea to have fine-tuning tools for the extreme highlights, the extreme lowlights. And to me, that is part of a more logarithmic change of the curve. So I just put it there as well. The next one, sky. After many years of experience, I know that when you're outdoor, people will ask you to deal with the sky. Like too bright, too dark, add blue, take away blue, whatever it is. If it is an indoor shot, then you can think about ceiling. A lot of people like to put a small vignette or a small gradient on the ceiling to take down the ceiling lightness, if you wish. So you can just add this sky ceiling. Skip one for a second, node label skin. Now, I do not do secondary on the skin. For me, when I do balance, it means that the main actress balance, color, skin tone has to be right. Then I do everything else. There is no reason for me to make the white, white, the black, black if the skin tone of the main character is not right. Think about it. Who tells the story? The main character. I don't give a damn if the black is not black. I need her to look good in this particular shot. Now, why do I have a skin node if I don't do that? Because especially in TV, people ask you to do little refinement on the skin of an actress. For example, take away a little bit of the wrinkles, pimples, this little detail that sometimes they ask you to do. So I want a node where I can just select the skin and do whatever I wanted to do with it. And I actually use quite extensively the beauty plugin from Resolve. I think it's fast. It gives you a pretty good result. So just loosely select the skin, loosely put a mask or where the actress is, throw the beauty plugin, work with it. You usually get a pretty good result, and I use that for TV a lot. In this one, I'm starting to like in the color warper, curves and warper. So if I need to use the color warper, or if I need to use the curve for whatever reason, there is a particular color that I need to change, I want their own node. So I tend to put it there, and that's more like a global change. For example, in a movie that I'm doing right now, the blue of the window that they are putting in, it feels too green. It should be a little bit more nightlight. And I know it's something that it's in the whole scene. You don't even have to think about it. It's the whole scene. So I'm loosely selecting the color, putting a curve in, did the correction that I want with the cyan, just dragging it a little bit, get what I want, and move on. Then let me do another corrector. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Connect those guys, put a parallel node. There you are. Add one input, put it in. Okay, so you see the first two where the first balance block. All these in the middle are the tweaks. So those 5 at the bottom is whatever the director wants. They are just free for all. After you did all the things you have to do, say, oh, can you just darken the bottom corner, the pavement, the reflection on the car, whatever you need to do in addition to what you already did. So those are literally free for you to use as much as you want it. This second block will be the tweaks, will be the nodes of the tweak. Let's see if it's 10 actually. 4, they're 12. I never remember how many. Now, earlier you asked me, do you change something for other movies? For example, for Midway with Roland Emmerich, I knew that I had sky, but also I knew I had water. The VFX supervisor told me, hey, you gotta help me because some of the water just doesn't quite work. So, okay, I added simply another node. In that case, was just before the left side of the screen was here, so I can get a clear key out of my balance, and it was called water. And I knew every time we go in the Pacific, I may have to select the water, I may have to slightly change the color of the water. So sometimes you know ahead of time, oh, that movie has a particular challenge, so you just make a node for that particular challenge. Another movie that I did where we knew we had to do quite a lot of work on 5 or 6 scenes for the trees. The tree were shot during, I think it was late spring or early summer. And they were too green because it was supposed to be already fall or starting of the winter. So we had to select all those leaves and make them gray or make them, brownish. And that was a lot of key and tracking. So I had an extra node that was actually a compound node. Within the compound node, I had to do all this tracking and all this stuff. It was about 50 shots. But because I knew ahead of time, I just prepare an extra node called leaf. And every time I need it, I go in and I do it. After this one, we are at the trim level. This is the shot trim. And we go there. I will explain all of that in a moment. 2, 3, 4. Okay. This one is OFX. I should probably start to switch the effect and the shot trim because it makes more sense. This is the vignette. Just let me name it, and then I will be with you. And you can use as many more or less nodes you want it. It really doesn't matter. Make a structure, try if it works. Like my structure changed several times during the course of years, because you get used to it and say, hey, I think I need one more, or this thing that I thought it was useful is not. This is direct DOP. Actually, no, sorry. Okay, so the last block, you have a shot trim. Now, shot trim is usually useless unless you have supervised sessions. So what happened to me, let's think about, for example, TV. TV, you may have an entire day where you do a pass by yourself to the whole episodes, because sometimes you can work by yourself, and it's great when you can. Just move this one out. And then the director of photography comes in and sits with you, and you start to do his pass. The problem is that he may ask to do a correction that if you do here, you may break the sky key. Oh. So when I have a live session with a client, when I need to rebalance certain shots, I actually use this node. So I know that none of the selection I did so far will break. And, usually you need to know your clients, obviously, but usually it's, oh, I want everything a little bit darker, or, just that shot, can you make it a little bit contrastier? And if you get used to the fact that that is the director per shot trim, you're not going to break anything you did so far. You don't have to think about, oh my God, where I put my next correction, I'm going to break something. You don't. It's after your shot trim. OFX down here, this guy is usually for little effect the client may ask you. Put a lens flare, or dust busting. Sometimes you have shot with a little bit of dust, dead pixels, the kind of stuff that it's more of a general effect on a shot that you decide to do because you can. Vignetting, inside, outside. This one, again, quite a lot of director of photography like the idea of vignette, so I already have a node because I know it's going to happen. And what happens is sometimes you do a vignette, you make your selection, you darken it down, or the shot feel dark. You don't want to go back to the balance and brighten it because, again, you can break some keys. Then you just say, okay, connect those two, get the outside, and you're good. Angle, I will explain with an example later, but let's say that you have two people talking. Night actually will happen in this particular group. Let me just rearrange for a second. You see there is one angle of she talking versus the cousin, and then the other angle, and then there is the more global one when they are talking to each other from the side, and there are a couple of singles at the end of she's arriving. And sometimes you realize everything is great, but one angle is slightly too dark. So you can grab all the shot, use this angle, make a correction, trim it up, and the whole camera block went where you want it. Again, putting it here doesn't break anything that you did so far. At the end, there is the actual trim for the whole scene. A scene trim, there is a global scene if you see that the scene need help, or if you want to establish from the beginning, which is the look of the scene. Imagine, for example, that the scene need to be really, really blue and desaturated. You don't want to do this for the beginning because then it's difficult to pull keys. You want to keep the shot with all the color throughout the whole trimming process and just have the scene node at the end, making it more blue desaturated. The second one is the scene trim for the director of photography or the director, whoever has the power. You did everything, you think you nailed it, you didn't. The director of photography say, I want everything warmer. Again, that's a specific node for him. And you want to put it here so you can also reverse it. Because one thing that you have to get used if you work supervise is the client asking you, can you show me how it was before? If you did it here, it becomes difficult to undo it. If you did it here, you can just mute the shot, mute the nodes, and you can show before and after very quickly. If it's a correction for the whole scene, you can do it here. You can mute that shot for the whole scene, and you can go back and forth. The last one is the Hail Mary pass, the Santa Maria shot. It's when everybody agree, everything is good, and you have somebody come out at the last moment, usually a producer, sometimes an editor, sometimes the girlfriend of the goddamn director. Oh, I think this one should be much brighter, and you have to do it. But you want to do it again in a way where you can back off from it. And I'm not kidding. I got the girlfriend of a director of photography. He invited her over one night just to see what we were doing. She made a comment, and because the DP likes her, we had to show it to her. So, of course, we can do that.
I got to do these things.
So let me reset then the grade and keep the nodes. And let's get all the shots, all clips. We got the beginning, we select the beginning, and we select the back. Now I'll do it with the keyboard. I save a memory. Let me just reset for a second and reapply the memory. So now everything has exactly the same node.
Okay.
Now, why we want to have the same node? Because of this beautiful two object, the ripple. Ripple allow you to make a change and ripple through a group or ripple through the clip you selected. And in the big panel, in the new keycaps that I don't have yet, you have it. So if you're used to work on this way and you say, oh, this scene is the final scene, I want everything to be golden. Let me just do one thing. I want a printer lights, and I'm just making it golden using printer lights. La, 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 la. And say color, ripple to the group. Boom. All three shots have the right color. See?
Yeah, that's right.
So the general idea now is, let's go back to the garden, just because I like her. This one. This is a good shot. So first thing you want to do is to see if the scene is where you want it to be. So the shot is balanced, so that I don't need to do really anything. But let's say that for this scene, we decide that we want to have a little bit more contrast and a little bit warmer. Why not? So you can do contrast pretty much using the tool you want it. I'm going to use straight contrast because why not? And I go way farther than what I wanted, but so you can see it in your end. And then I'm using offset to add warmth. Again, I'm going way too far, but just to a little bit less yellow. Color, ripple to the group. Because I already divided in group, the whole scene is getting that particular starting point.
Yeah.
The next thing I'm doing, view, thumbnail mode, A and C. What are those? Usually you see those little things in the order they are edited in the timeline. one shot after the other after the other. But what if we can rearrange them based on source time code? So if you do that, you will see the shot that has been shot. Let me just make this one bigger so you can see better. Those 3 shots were shot about at the same time. They're probably different takes, but they carry absolutely the same light. This shot also carried the same light. So now you have group of shots that you can color correct in one chunk if you want to. Actually, this one also belongs to this one. That's the cousin. These 4 extra shots as her coming over. So let's do one thing very simple. We reorganize it, and I usually map, if you don't have a panel, I map them to the button A and C on the keyboard, so you can easily see how much switching. In the panel, in the big panel, it's mapped already. In the small one, it's not. So you can just map it on the keyboard or on a Stream Deck or whatever you use to support your color preferences. So let's see, for example, let's see if I can see the 2 cousins. There we are. So that's the shot that we decide to be the hero. Let's make it bigger. And that's her side. Her side is slightly redder. So I'm just going to grab everything from her side, go on the main balance, take away 1 click of red. You can see here I took away 1 click of red. Copy, repo to the selected clip. All those shots now got the correction. Then this one, I know that those one compared to the hero shot, that is 13. Display, wipe timeline clip, there you are. As you can see, she's brighter. And those 2 shots belong to the same cut. Grab them. Again, I'm just going to do offset down. And 1 extra red, no, perhaps not. Color, ripple to the selected clip. So those 2 shots, they belong to the same thing. This one, it's her turning around, so she belonged to the same correction that I did here. That one is the first shot. Let me see. She looks too bright here compared to when she turned around. So let's wipe the timeline clip. I'm using the keyboard to do on and off. She feels too bright. Balance 1, 2, 3, 4. Why not? Now you see me use offset. Why do I use offset? For one simple reason. The color space we're doing the color, it's a logarithmic color space. In a pure mathematical logarithmic color space, offset represent almost perfectly an exposure change on the set mathematically and a white balance change as if you're doing it in camera. Even in a color space like log C or S log 3, they're not mathematically perfect. They're still close enough that within 2 stops of exposure, you can use offset and pretty much the photography will behave as if you're doing a change in camera. So I don't fiddle with temperature and tint. I don't fiddle with the raw parameter. I'm expecting the director of photography already did that. I shouldn't do that. It also, if you fiddle with the raw parameter, the problem that you can incur is if the director of photography is looking for a very specific effect, for example, is shooting in daylight, but it changed deliberately the color temperature to making it warmer, more sunlight, golden. If you try to balance it out, now you're going against the director of photography. So always assume that unless you have an idiot giving you an image, he knows what he's doing. What else left in this scene? Let's see, this guy. So this guy feels not warm enough. So this is the angle. We can put it on the angle. No, sorry, this is the main, but we're still at the main balance. Main balance, this one feels a little bit too contrast, so I'm gonna take away a tiny bit of contrast and add a warm to it. Color, ribbon of the change to the selected clips. Okay, so we did, I did something stupid here. Why this one went off? Did I mute it without even realizing it? Yes, I did. Why?
Because I'm an idiot.
It's okay, I did in the angle, fine, doesn't matter. Okay, so it took me quite a long time to do it because I was explaining, but basically what I did is make the main color for the scene based on whatever is the hero. She's the hero of the story. I want her to look good. I don't care about the green in the back. We'll fix that later if it doesn't match. She looks good. Then she is the supporting actor or the other actress in the movie. Second thing I did, her side, be sure that all the shot in her side look good and coherent. Then I went to the outlier here. I know there were a couple of outliers. Watch always your entire scene before you start color correct, so you know where are the outliers. And then I did the global here, just to merge it with the rest. At this point, you can start watching it. I don't need the audio, thank you. Now, you can see that I'm playing a 50 frame a second, even if the piece it's actually a 25 because it was European. The reason is I want to see more shot in the minimum amount of time possible to see if the scene even works. If the scene doesn't work, there is no reason to start trimming. Once the main balance is done, then you start trimming. For example, she lacks a little bit of highlights because the sun is not on her. So let's see if we can help her a little bit. Let's get all her shot from her angle again. And I'm going in logarithmic. And I'm going to just open slightly the top end. There you are, why not? Color, repo to the selected clips. Play again. Okay, that should be, slightly better. Is it perfect? No. Also, I'm doing it with the mouse, not with the panel. But this scene now is in the ballpark. Now the director of photography should see it. Before you start to do anything else, the director of photography should be with you and say, okay, do we like it? Let's say the director of photography say, can you show me a version that is not this warm? Okay, back to your lady. Taking away a little bit of warm. I did it again with printer lights. Color, ripple to the whole group because it's something that you want to the whole group. Hit play. I just did a trim to the whole scene from beginning to end with a simple click and go. If you don't have a fixed node structure, you cannot take advantage of this. You can also use shared node if you wish to do so. That means that, for example, all the DOP nodes is shared in the whole scene. You do a click and it's there. It's a preference. Because I start to use fixed node structure before the shared node were invented, I end up to get so used to do it that I'm simply not using it because I'm not used to it. But pretty much this is a version that should work. Now, let's go to a different scene just because, and let's do something stupid. Yeah, why not? Let's use this one. Let's say that this scene, we want to make it black and white-ish. Why not? Black and white. And we add a bunch of contrast, and we pog it, and we say color, ripple to the selected group. So the whole group now has your main scene trim. But the good thing is that all your trim are not in black and white. They're still in color. If I mute this one, you still have the original color. So if you need to pull a key for a skin tone, you can still do it. I don't know which kind of light he has on him. That's a little bit silly, but why not? So let's say that we want to pull a very soft key on him. Let's see. Yeah, something like this. There you are. Just making it stupid just because. And let's say, go away. And let's say that we want to, why not just brighten him slightly. There. You can still do it because the color is still there. The color decision that you took to make it in black and white, it's after the fact. So now you can just reorder your shot and deal with brightness. In this case, just because it's black and white, like this one is too dark. I know here there are shots from all over the place. This one should be brighter. This one is a little bit brighter. This one brighter. Okay, those 4 or 5 shots should be all brighter. And so forth. I think there are 3 left. Yeah. This guy is the husband, completely useless. Okay. And so forth. Then you start to watch it, you start to trim it, whatever you have to do it. Like this one, way too bright, just darken the, oops. And darken slightly, and so forth. So this is the basic idea. Fixed node structure. Fixed node structure should give you discipline, should give you the ability to quickly ripple a correction throughout multiple nodes. And it give you also the idea of what you did. If you reopen a project 3 years from now, if I open, for example, Green Book, even if it was a different color, different node structure, because it's clear what I'm trying to do, you look at the node, you see what you did. Funny story about Green Book, we did the first pass, me and the director of photography, Sean, and we went really dramatic, like way too dark. And pick the director, come in and say, you guys are ruining my movie. What the fuck is this? I don't see Marsha Ali. What are you thinking? So the fact that I have a full node structure, I went to a scene and said, okay, let me do something. I brightened it up about 1/3 of a stop. I did it for the whole scene. I played the scene and say, is this more in line of what you want to see? And say, yes, give me 10 minutes. In 10 minutes, every single scene in the 5 reel was trimmed. And I can go to the beginning, hit play. I just brightened the whole goddamn movie 1/3 of a stop with a very simple correction and trim. Could not do it if it was not a fixed node structure.
Oh, thank you, Walter. De los participantes, ¿quiere alguna pregunta que quieran hacerle a Walter Volpattto?
Yo tengo una cosa.
¿Eh?
Yo tengo una.
Ok. Let's go.
Dame un momento. ¿Me escuchas?
Sí.
Go ahead, Fred.
Go ahead.
¿Me hace cumplir?
¿En inglés o en español?
My Bluetooth device is so sorry. Don't worry about it. Well, come in. Yes, I'm in.
Oh, while Fred is doing what he's doing, let me reshare for a second.
Okay.
Share for a second. Let me go back to the...
Okay.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Fred.
Okay.
Okay, Freddy.
Well, I'm right here. Do you listen? You listening to me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Thank you, Walter. Thank you for everything, for every class that I received of you. You're a special reference to me. And I got a question about texture, about film grain, about, for example, in Interstellar, that I think is the best grading of the world. Which amount of film grain is part of your work?
Yep.
And is from the footage? I mean, how do you work with film grain and texture in general?
Okay, so Unfortunately, I'm changing my mind on grain, and I explain you why. First of all, I love grain. I love the idea of grain, and for me, it reminds me of film. I mean, there is really nothing more obvious than grain to tell you this has been shot in film. Now, Interstellar was shot in film, like Dunkirk, like others. So the grain was naturally what the film negative, actually in this case, interpositive, was giving you. And I always like to add grain to my project. There is a problem, and it's how we actually watch nowadays footage, Netflix or Amazon or TV, whatever. The compression system is killed in the details. So there is a problem where the more grain you add, the more hard the compression algorithm has to work in order to keep those details, and the more compression you get on the actual overall image. So nowadays, unless the image already has grain, or unless the image was, unless the director of photography really wanted me to add a bunch of grain, I tend to do not add it anymore, because you'll never see what I'm seeing. The compression will kill it. It's just the way it works. And when I work with material that has grain, I only worry about the shot-to-shot-to-shot consistency. So I'm looking for the outliers, usually, the underexposed shot. If I need to attack grain, I only reduce the underexposed ones just enough that they blend with the other ones. I try not to add. I work with a director of photography that he likes to shoot in film, and the first thing he does is passing through neat video to take away the grain, because he likes the color of film, not the grain. I don't think it's a good idea, but hey, if you like it, we'll do that. Usually, if somebody shot in film, it's because they like the texture. And I usually tend to just preserve it. Just don't do anything stupid to it. Try to preserve it as much as possible. Try to blend it. And that's about it. But for the longest time, I was the one asking, add grain. Now I don't do it anymore. Now, for the actual quality of grain itself, you can use, resolve grain, plates like Cine grain. You can use live grain that costs impossible amount of money. Given that at the end of the day, everything will be compressed, and given that on a real image, you will not be able to see the difference, who cares? Use whatever grain you have, it's fine. I usually use resolve grain. Occasionally I use Cine grain, but the one with the flicker, just to make something look extremely old. Or, for example, if you have old footage and you have to blend new text, then that's a good idea. I was doing a restoration of was a 1920-ish silent movie, and the only version they could find was the French one with the French cards, and we had to do an English one. So we need to retype it. We find a font that was close enough, was a font from the 20s. We find something that was close enough, but it looked too modern. So we want to make it worse. So we were able to just use that grain and that flickery to add enough. Then we got one of the original cards and I track it. And I got the tracking data, put it on the other one, so you get the waviness that is very coherent with the original one. And then we try to evaluate how much out of focus the lens was doing on the edges and try to replicate that. Is it perfect? No, but it's close enough that you don't think, oh, this is a new card. Did I answer your question?
Yes, of course. Thank you so much.
Of course.
Hola, gente. ¿Alguien más con una pregunta, por favor?
Yo, porfa, ¿puedo?
Jair.
You can also probably ask the question in the chat if you want it. Yeah, why not?
Okay, I will.
Actually, there is Rodolfo has a question. Hold on. Okay, so he's talking about workflow for visual effect.
Yes.
Now, the basic idea is you want to try to do not collapse the color decision until is absolutely necessary. So let me share again my screen. Let me get this one. Let me get a new layer. I'm a donkey with Photoshop. Okay, let's get a new layer. So the basic idea is you build a look, okay? The look can be a combination of many different things, but at the end of the day, you can represent a close enough look with a lookup table. For example, you cannot represent a vignette, you cannot represent grain, you cannot represent an out of focus. If you put that in a vignette, you cannot represent that, but you can represent the general tonal grade, color decision, whatever is the main look of your movie. That one should go to the VFX company. Okay. The original camera, they also go to the VFX company in either logarithmic, or a lot of people want linear light. Linear light basically means how the sensor captures the data, no transformation applied. They do the VFX together, looking under the look. They give to the editorial a QuickTime with the look baked in so they can see if it fits within the photography. And now the problem is, okay, but a shot may require a little bit of color adjustment. You can, but my recommendation is to, hold on, that should be like that, is to only use RGB offset. Every VFX package can do RGB offset. Because remember, RGB offset in logarithmic represent very well exposure and white balance. If you're in linear light, you want to only use gain. Gain in linear light absolutely represent perfectly exposure and close enough white balance. To give you an idea, if you are on the set and you double the amount of light, the sensor will get double amount of light. The actual value in the raw data is double. That is linear light, set light. If you gain by 2, you exactly do 1 stop of exposure. So everything correlates. And that's why usually VFX people want to work in linear light, because using gain, you actually match very, very good what the photography was. And the 3D package can give you objects that are in linear light, and the physics of light works in that way. Also, the edges works much better when you do the blending in linear light. Once the VFX is completed, then they give you a log version back to the color correction. And it's basically not dissimilar to just de-Bayer log. So that is the preferred workflow. Occasionally, the problem is that the sequence, it's all over the place, and you do need to do color correction. So you have the original camera, raw. You de-Bayer that as a log. You put it in your color corrector. Let's say you have a sequence made of all these shots, but only these shots here, these shots, these shots, these shots are VFX. So only some of them are VFX, but you need to do a basic color grade to bring them in the ballpark. So just use again RGB offset to basically, do whatever you have to do to bring them in the ballpark. And then I recommend to export EXR 16-bit, if you can, logarithmic. So the idea is you give back, so 1, 2, 3, 4. You did your balancing pass. The scene now is coherent, and you give to the people that have to do VFX shots that they are not too destroyed. If you start to put windows, if you start to do too much, now it can be difficult later on to reconcile the VFX. So you want to do just a basic balance, bring it in the ballpark. If you need to do a little bit of contrast to match cameras, do that, but that's it, and then send it over. So that's roughly how we do VFX. Now I see a second question: do you use exposure or show lots? Yes, I use show lots all the time. What I usually do, let me see, go back here. What I usually do, I build the look on, and here we can just lose ourselves if I start to talk about this, but I usually use frame like this one. They represent the photography itself. So let's explain what that frame look like and why it look like that. Imagine for a second an ideal camera, an ideal EXA camera. It shot all the light from the set, and then you have to convert that in log C, okay? Log C. Now, log C is a well-defined color space. Germany decide I want a color space that can contain 16 stop of latitude, equidistant, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, up to 16. Because they think that within 16 stop, you have enough latitude to create your photography and to play with your photography with enough overexposure and underexposure. If you look at the red log G310, log 3G10, I never remember how to spell it. It's log 3G10. There is the current one, also is a 16 stop exposure color space. Canon log the same, Sony S-Log3 the same. So they basically say we think, as a general purpose, that 16 stop of latitude should be enough to bring the photography from what you're trying to do on the set to the final display. And now the question is, okay, how many stops actually are usually used by a director of photography? I don't know if we were just used to it because that's what film can do, or it's because it's the most pleasing way, or whatever. Usually 7 stops are roughly what a director of photography exposes on the set, roughly. So you have the 18% gray card. There is the gray card that they put on the set. They measure that. Every camera that you use has a exposure set that basically decide where this guy goes. From there, roughly, people like me, they have a white mozzarella skin tone, are 1 stop over. Brown people or light African-American people, they are at stop. Very dark skin, like a Senegalese, dark skin. There is an actor that I'm working with for Queen Sugar. He tends to be really dark. He may be a -1. A very white skin tone with a porcelain tone, it can be, 1.5 above. So that's roughly where skin tone goes. And we use number 1 just because, unfortunately, the majority of Hollywood people that goes in front of the camera are white mozzarellas. If you do a movie, for example, in Africa, you will have a lot of this type of skin. If you do a movie in Mexico, Peru, where you have a little bit more of brown skin, you tend to be, in this particular zone. So from here you have, let's say, one stop above, you have your main character. And then you expose 3 stop above, and this is diffuse white. So the whole portion above that white will be the shoulder of your S-curve. You gently bend that. There's still a little bit of detail, but mostly we don't care about what happened there. On the bottom, it's similar. But which color was using? Red. You do 1, 2, let's say 3 stop of good exposure, and the rest is the toe of the S-curve. So if you build an S-curve, you will have an 18% gray here, and you will have 1, 2, 3, and the rest fold. Actually, 4 and the rest fold. 1, 2, 3, and the rest fold. If you get pretty much any lookup table that you can find that looks good, you will see the roughly 7 stop of exposure are correctly represented in the final display. Be in your display, the theater, be your display, a TV, internet, and I don't do much more different for HDR. I probably add 1 stop on the top and a little bit on the bottom, so perhaps 8. But that's also how I do HDR. It doesn't really change. So if we go here and we take away this one and we put this one up. Okay, scopes. There we are. You will see that that signal is literally, this scope is going out to the screen. Sorry, let me make it smaller. There we are. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, blah, 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 16 steps.
Right.
And where the grayscale goes, that one, I basically downloaded the white paper from Sony, from Arri, and from Red, and it'll tell you which number those fell. And it's literally, again, the manufacturer decide, I want my grayscale to be at this value. So in the case, for example, of Sony, it fills there. For Arri, fills there. For Red, fills there. What happened? Sony tend to have a little bit more low-end stops and a little bit less on the top. Arri is the most balanced. Red does the opposite. Red says, I want to have a lot of stop of exposure, of overexposure, but not many of underexposure. And that's actually a problem for Red, because if you underexpose, you only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stop under gray. If you underexpose, you clip the signal. You got nothing left there. So while Red keeps saying, oh, expose at 1600, I actually tell you, expose at 800, because you go up a stop, and it's actually closer to what an Alexa will do. So rate Red cameras at 800, you will have a much, much cleaner sensor. After that, you make the look. So let's say, do I have an Alexa here? Yes, I have an Alexa. If I just put the Alexa lookup table on and nothing else, that's the S-curve that come from Munich. I didn't invent this one. This is how Arri Munich decide to have the lookup table built for Alexa. Lookup table from Arri, nothing else is than an elegant way to bring your photography to the screen. And if you go from the gray, you can see 1, 2, 3, 4.5 stop above, and then you start to fold. 1, 2, 3.5 below, and you fold. So 4.5, 3.5, it's an 8 stop of contrast. It means it's a flatter look than what film will be. If you look at the Sony one, I think I have a Sony. Yeah. If you look at the Sony, we have to do the Sony transformation. There is this one. And that's not dissimilar to what Alexa did, because we are using the same Alexa representation. The grayscale is roughly, the 18% gray is roughly in the same place. You have the same amount of stop on the top, same amount of stop on the bottom, nothing changed. So when I build a look, I tend to look at this kind of stuff. How many stuff the director of photography would like to see? Let's say the director of photography want to see less a much more contrast one, 5 stop of exposure. Let's do it with a contrast. Let's put back the grayscale where it is. There we are. So if you see, I just add contrast. Now I have 1, 2.5 on the top, 1, 2, and some on the bottom. This is only 5 stop of final contrast. Now, why do I do all of this? Because you have to think about how the director of photography light a set. They have one reference, that is the gray chart. And then they put light to illuminate a subject. And they use the light meter and say, okay, skin tone, 1 stop over, great. That particular diffuse white, 2 stop over, great, I'm done. What about the black? Measure here, measure there, I'm done. So they measure ratio of light on the set, namely stops. I want this ratio to be preserved when I build the look. If we build the look together like that one, and I build the lookup table and I send it to the camera, the director of photography know he has 5 stop, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, almost 6 stop of good exposure. The rest is either on the shoulder or on the toe, and that's it. That's how I build lookup table. I tend to look at the photographic stops. And if you build it in this way, it doesn't matter what the content is on the set. It's about ratio. You put the light meter there. If the skin tone of the character is a stop above, it will fall here. It doesn't fall anything else. It's not brighter or darker. It falls there. It's just math. I hope I answered the question, even if it was a big digression.
It's okay?
More than okay. Thank you very much, Walter.
I had just one more question. It's more regarding like delivery and limiting. For example, if you're gonna go for Rec 2020 and want to limit it to, for example, P3, how would you go about doing it with a color space transform, with a custom color management in the node structure?
Okay. So the basic idea I need to share before I start to talk, otherwise you don't see what I'm doing. So let's say for the sake of discussion that I'm building an HDR look, right? So up to here, we were in 709. So this lookup table was done for 709, was done for normal video. So you want to transform this guy to HDR. If you just put color space transform, you know you're getting a 709 2.4 because that's what that lookup table is doing. And you can, build your HDR as you want it. It doesn't matter. To P3D65 and okay, none, okay. So you can see here, let me switch this guy to HDR. You can see here you have an S-curve and you're limited 100 nits because that's what I'm doing. I'm literally just say, grab the 709, gamma 2.4, and schlamp it into the HDR color space. Now, let's say just for example, they want to do 2, 3, 4, 500 nits mapping just to do something quick and dirty with you. I'm just going to gain this one to roughly here. And then I'm going to get just some of those highlights. That's too much. Just, yeah, we are. With the mouse is difficult, sorry about that. Okay, so I just did something very silly, very stupid, very simple. I grabbed my lookup table that was done for SDR. I remap it for 650 nits, I guess. Yeah, 650 nits. And that will give you a starting point to do your HDR. Now, why do I do that? For the same reason. I'm keeping the same exposure stops that were given me by the director of photography. So I'm starting to do the HDR. with the same photographic spread using the same photographic principle. This one, you're targeting now P3 PQ, so the HDR color space, because TVs, that's what they do. I mean, you don't have a 2020 TV unless you have a high-end Sony X300 with the 2020 option. So you usually color on a P3 PQ. That could be a Flander, it could be an LG, it could be whatever your budget can allow to do it. After that, you need to deliver a 2020, and you need to limit to P3 PQ. So the first thing you want to do, it's actually that color transformation. Go away. P3D65 ST2084, that is the PQ color space, to 2020, again ST2084. I don't want any of this fanciness. Now, the problem is you're not limiting. You can create color that exceed the color space. So here you have to make a limiter. I think is this one. I need to check because I never remember. So the correct gamut, no, it's not this one. Yes, this one. Okay, correct gamut is P3D65, and you are in PQ. And you want to limit at P3D65. So basically, you're telling whatever is above P3D65, please don't give it to me. I don't want it. So this is your limiter. And this is your 2020. Okay? Everything is good. Everything is great, except you're not passing quality control. It will fail. And it will tell you there is a single goddamn pixel in the whole goddamn episode that pass the value by literally a bit, a 1 bit. That's the problem with approximation of mathematics. Resolve approximate that particular value of the pixel to X, but that X is literally X plus 1 in the QC report. So how you deal with that? The best way to deal it is literally going here, and instead of 50, you say 49.99. It will not change the look and feel of your movie. Nobody can see a 1% less saturation. Also, you still have to compress this. You still have to send it through the pipe. People at home are uncalibrated. So that little saturation change will not do anything to your image, but you will pass QC. So the limiter plus the 2020 transform plus that little saturation that you do should guarantee you that you pass QC and you'll be able to do a master that fits the bill. At the moment, I have not been asked to do a 2020 without the P3 limiter. I just never been asked. So for me, that's what we do. We usually start with a lookup table. There was a daily SDR lookup table. From that lookup table, we build an HDR mapping. We do the color correction. Then we transform the P3 PQ to 2020 with a limiter. If you look at Sweet Tooth on Netflix, has been done in that way. The look was decided before me starting the color. So they have a very specific lookup table they want to use. We remap the lookup table to... The first episode is different because it was the pilot. But all the other one, I think I map it to 650. Opening slightly the shoulder so you see a little bit more detail in the skies, a little bit more detail there. And then color happy until, they say we like it. We did the 2020, we send it. Now, why I don't do, let me digress yet one more. Why I don't do what other people do for HDR, where you have your photography, right? And, it's already a log. I just bring my photography and I go to the PQ space that it's already a log space, and I color until I'm happy. Because I don't think it's correct. The director of photography only expose a certain amount of steps, let's say 7 or 8. I want those one to go to PQ. I don't want to redesign the shoulder and the toe for every single shot arbitrarily. And the idea is you're not redoing the photography. You're grabbing the photography that was done on the set, you are enhancing. Another thing that people do, let's say you have a lookup table with an S-curve, and that lookup table goes to PQ. They just stretch this one to infinite because I want to have all this power. But your subject is still here. Your main character is, your main character is here. Why do you get white?
God damn it. I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah, your character is here. If the difference before was 3 stop and it was pleasing, now you may have 7 stop of difference. And frankly, if somebody's against a window, I don't give a damn what's outside of the window. Usually it's distracting. So you do this one with your lookup table, and in correction, the first thing you do, guess what, is rebuilding the goddamn shoulder. Why do I want to do that? To me, the most elegant thing to do, you have the lookup table, you have your look, that it's an S-curve. This S-curve, it's remapped to, let's say it was 100 nits or 48 theatrical. This is remapped to, let's pick a number, 500 nits. And then I just give you a little bit of detail back. So the sky gets better, the clouds get better, but this is no more than a stop. A stop, it's already a lot. Because if you have a character against a bright sky, a stop, it's a lot. So not more than that. Give you some detail, perhaps recover a little bit of those, and you go up to, let's say, 650. 650, everybody can see it. Most of the TV out there can do 650. Even the iPad can do 650s. Well, 500-ish. But the idea is every single stop the director of photography sweat for 3 months to put on the set is retained. I don't keep, this guy down here and just give you highlights. That doesn't work. To me, it doesn't work. And I know a lot of people do the other way. They're very successful. Kudos to them. I don't like it.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Walter, for the answer.
Of course.
Thank you. Walter, please, one question. Which color management you prefer?
Say again, which color?
Management.
Oh,
color management.
Yeah. The idea is that because I come from a period of time where there was no color management, I worked on Quantel for freaking 10 years. I got used to do my color management. So I use Resolve OFX Transform to bring the shots from the color they are to the color space that I want to. I work in logarithmic, and then I do whatever transformation, look, LUT, whatever it is that it makes sense at the end. If I have to go to another color space, like you just saw me going to HDR, again, I use the color Resolve OFX. I did a couple of projects in ACES. It works. It's not that it doesn't. The only problem for me for ACES is the way they do HDR. They do what I show you, where they only open the highlights, and I don't think it's a good way to do it. So you need to work harder to force ACES to do what you wish. That's the problem for me for ACES. The thing is that, like I say, I got so used to do that implicitly I do all the transformation by myself. There is actually, okay, so there is a question about Documento sulle ballerine. I think it's a documentary on Havana. Gosh, what was the title? Doesn't matter. It's people dancing in Havana. Okay, so documentary in general. First of all, trust your camera, your director of photography. Again, if you go with an Alexa outside and you have, people dancing outside, you cannot put dancing card, you cannot put lighting, but the cameras are built in a way they can capture daylight correctly. You just have to put literally measure with your exposimeter the main 18% gray, make the white balance at 5500, you're done. Most of the camera capture correctly. The challenge usually is when you go on the dark where, we couldn't put any light, so we have to do whatever we have to do. In that case, then yes, you need to help with recovering lights, recovering exposure. You get a noisier image. I finished something for Apple Plus called Fathom, where those are scientists that follow whales. Half of the movie is done in Alaska, half of the movie is done in Polynesia. Completely different skies, completely different light condition. Just follow whatever the light was. If a shot is done in daylight, it's probably daylight. It's unlikely that you want to do a day for night. Yes, you cheat a little bit, like pre-dawn for dawn, or barely lighting for dawn, or sunset. But that's kind of the skill you build to create a look for the scene. Blending the shot shouldn't be that difficult. Now, every single camera, unless you're using really a cheap-ass camera, can get you enough latitude where you can rebuild rebuild the photography close enough. If it's clipped or if it's crashed, it's not there anymore. There is nothing you can do.
Okay, ¿alguien más con una pregunta? A ver, ¿y alguna más pregunta? Walter, the last question, one moment. Please, tell me something about. Wait.
Ooh.
Please look.
Of course. Everybody asks me the question.
It's a classic.
I know. Take away the sharing. I'll tell you how this was done.
Okay.
Okay, so I need to add one more layer. Shift 5. Okay, so first of all, we need to understand who's Christopher Nolan and who's Holbein Oidma in terms of the stylistic choice they do. You see my screen, right? Yes. Christopher Nolan loved photochemical printing, loved photochemical representation. For him, digital can die tomorrow, he'll be happy. The problem is the film, especially as a projection, died a decade ago. So for us, the challenge for Dunkirk was to reproduce the photochemical finishing that he wanted to do. So let's start with the basics. How photochemical finishing is done. So let's talk about 35 millimeter just because it's simpler, but they were using IMAX and 65. Doesn't change much, it's just more complex. So you go on the set and you shoot your roll of film, okay? The roll of film are shot using the 18% gray, and the photographic stops that, in that case, Holbein Oidma, director of photography, choose to do on the set. For example, Interstellar, half of it was done in 35. This one, it's developed and it's a negative, okay? There is the develop on the lab, it create a negative. Now, you cannot see a negative, just you can't, you don't want to do this. So the negative need to be printed on a positive print. The print is projected. Okay. Here in the middle, based on the way it was shot, the director of photography usually talk with the color timer on the lab, and he says, you know, I was add exposure. Can you add a bit of blue? I want everything warmer or cooler. You use printer light. Now, printer light, because you get a print out of this process, and light because you physically add red, green, or blue light to make this print lighter, darker, or with more red or more blue or whatever. Okay. It's that literal. They add light to a negative during the exposure process of the print, then the print is developed as well, and you get your projected daily. Those dailies are screened by the director and the director of photography to see if they got everything they needed, if there is any quality issue or you know, out of focus. So when they say, yeah, we got what we wanted, they move to the next scene. What happened after that? This print depends. This negative, sorry, not the print. They don't do the print anymore. The negative gets scanned or telecine. And they do, for example, I don't know, DNX 36 QuickTime. This go to the editorial stuff. In the old days, the print was used to actually do an edit cut. Now it's digital. So this one goes telecine, become digital. You have proxies. These proxies retain the original key code of the print. So every single negative in the world has a unique key code for each frame of that particular roll. The key code is maintained. So later on, you know that if you need that particular frame, you need to cut the negative at that particular frame. The edit is done. And I know I'm going very from far, but the edit generate a cut list. Why is called cut list? Because it's literally the list where you need to cut the physical negative to generate the final edit. So the cut list and the negative go in a place where the negative cutter basically splice. This is the portion of the negative we wanted, and there is the next one, and there is the next one, and they physically glue them together to create the final cut of the movie. And I'm doing all of this because both Dunkirk, Interstellar, Tenet are done with the same principle. They still cut and join the negative like we were doing in the 90s. For Christopher and Hoyte, there is no digital process. There is cutting the negative together. So the next thing that happened, the next thing that happened, you have a negative. With all the cuts. The color timer has the lights, the printer lights from the dailies. Based on that and based on what the director of photography wants, he modified those printer lights to create a new print, a work print, with the new printer lights. Okay. This one is a contact print, literally a one-to-one from the original negative. This print is screened. If the screening goes well, you're done. Usually it's not. You screen with the director of photography again with the director, and they say, okay, that scene is fine. I want this scene warmer, darker. That particular shot need to be brighter, that particular shot. And you can't really stop and look at single frames. That thing is playing at 24 frames a second. And you have a counter on the top that tells you where you are roughly in there. And you have to quickly write down the counter name, the note, until you screen the whole print. Then you go down and you do it again. New printer lights with correction, like this one changed, this one changed. Depending how much money you have, you can do the process few times. And the ability of the color timer in the past was to be able to see a print and knowing by experience how many printer lines they have to change to get it closer. If you just look at the print done, in the past, and you look critically like we do today, where you stop in a frame, you get an image, you go to the other frame, and you look at the other image, they don't look close by a lot. But when you see that in play, it's close enough, it's fine. Once you are at the last level and everybody say, I like it, this becomes the hero print. That is the print that represents the photography of the movie in that particular reel as best as technologically possible using a photochemical workflow. Now, Dunkirk has been released in print. There were 150 projectors, but we need to do the digital version because there are 10,000 projectors around the world. They need a digital version. So what do? Well, we need to match the hero print. We need to be able to do a digital version that match the hero print as close as possible. So what's the next step photochemically? Photochemically, in the old days, everybody was printing from the negative. It's a bad idea. You destroy the negative. So using the printer light, the final printer light that you have now, you create an intermediate positive. So we'll call this one IP, intermediate positive. This one, at all effects, it's a low contrast stock that is actually really close to the print. Nobody's going to project that, but if you project it, it's pretty close to the print, just a lower contrast. From that and you do from the negative, probably, let's see, 6 of them, where 1 or 2 usually are stored for future, if something happened. And from the other one, then you start to do the printing process. How you do the printing process? From the interpositive, you make another intermediate internegative. That internegative retain pretty much, well, roughly the same contrast of the original negative, but also all the printer lights that you decided before. From here, then you strike all the prints you wanted. Usually they strike, I don't remember how many, but let's say 100 prints from every internegative. So you have 4 interpositive. From this one, you can do about 10 internegatives. Sorry, 10, not 100. So 10 from each will be 40. 40 by 100, you do 4,000 print. After 4,000 print, you make new interpositive, new internegative, you print again. That's how we were working in the 90s. That's how we were working in the first half of the early 2000s. Nothing, mysterious about that. But let me get which color. Let's go black. This guy has every single decision that Christopher Nolan and Hoyte van Hoytema wants. It's there, every printer light. It matched the hero print as good as possible. Can we scan this guy and just make one trim that can give us back the hero print? That is exactly what we did. So you have a few challenges. First of all, in one side, You have a screen, you have a projector. That projector has a 5500 Kelvin xenon lamp. And that projector projects the print, the hero print. Okay? So we want to split the screen in a half. And here we project the hero print. On this side, there is the digital one. They have to match. And I'm not joking here. We project the hero print for Dunkirk or Interstellar against a digital version. They have to match. The funny thing is, it's not even a projection that simple. The screen is split in a half, and it's butterfly, so they have exactly a butterfly mirror version. They have to match. How you achieve that? We did a bunch of printings and a bunch of densitometric readings of the filmic process. With this one, we build an intermediate lot. We scan the interpositive, and then we start to look at the result. The lot was close, let's say about 90%, just using math, but not perfect. So we did a series of loop between going back to printing some tests, watch it again under the loop, and keep this loop few times until we went around 95% of visual match side by side. That particular lot become the Dunkirk lot. We end up basically, it took us 3 months.
Wow.
3 months to build that lot, because it has to sustain a true side by side. You're not just watching a print, going to another building, watching the digital. It's projected at the same time. Your eye, the worst thing you can do is showing two displays. It will pick up any difference. And you have a full photochemical process on one side and a photochemical plus scanning plus digital plus whatever you want to add in the other side. So we basically scan for Dunkirk were 10 rolls because they were half reels of 65 millimeter 5 perf. That was my hero. In this side, I have a 65 millimeter 5 perfs, and I had the hero print. I was actually manually myself threading the hero print from the negative in one side, in the other one, the lookup table, and there was one small correction per reel, because when you scan something, it could be slightly off. So there was just a small correction to balance it, hit play, and go. So I had one correction per reel and 3 months to build the actual lookup table we use for Dunkirk. That lookup table represents a full, precise 65 millimeter workflow.
Wow, impressive.
Yeah, it's a, how much was the color correction for Darky?
No process.
didn't really color correct it. We spend a lot of time to refine the lot to be able to sustain a side by side.